Sometimes, between the crumpled papers and piles of clothes, I can't seem to find my keys or my desire to live.
Chapter 7: Place and Privacy. Room. For the development of this chapter, I focused on the relationship between a person and their environment. The visible physical objects in the space reveal information about the state of mind of the subject, thus creating a complex portrait with a figure existing in relation to its surrounding space. The setting for this portrait is a windowless room in the basement. In Room appears a self-portrait in the form of a sculpture with pig features. In said sculpture, there is a tower of hats that represents the different presentations that a person can have. One of these hats is the one that appears in the Careful What You Wish For portrait, and also the fish in the painting appears here as a stuffed animal. The objects surrounding me have history and sentimental value. It was important for me to document my room, the place where I developed a great part of my creative process for this project. There is a painting palette for watercolor, some weights, clothes thrown on the floor, crumpled papers, empty water bottles, a backpack, a banana, an apple, and many other things that gave context to the narrative of my everyday life. Just like we previously saw in the last chapter, that our body changes as we change our habits, our environment does too. The photo camera mounted on the tripod is an indicator of the tools I use to document myself and my environment. Although I'm alone and in the comfort of a private place, seemingly unaware of the context, the camera points directly at me, to point out that I am posing for the camera, because I am aware that I am the model. On the right side of the figure, there are some sticky notes on the wall, with the things that are left to do. In the upper corner, there is a hanger, object that is present as a reminder. Reminder. Inspired by the clothes we hang to put away and forget about, I came up with the illustration, reminder not to hang myself, in rejection of the idea of putting myself away in a corner as time continues to pass. It embodies the guilt of not doing something meaningful with my life. Chapter 7: Place and Privacy. Studio. In the previous painting, the internal thoughts are reflected with honesty in a portrait that shows the subject and its privacy. This painting also shows my personal space. However, it is done in a context of a space open to other people. In here, there are more expectations as I am more exposed, and I feel the need to embody a version of myself that shows a good performance as an artist. To me, it was important to document my workspace in the school's art studio, because the space won't be the same before and after I interact with it. The portrait is titled Studio, and it shows me using the same gray clothes that appear on the floor in Room. The paint spots and stains on the table, on the floor, and on the wall show the history of the place. Despite being someone who tries to preserve shared spaces, I believe those elements are important factors in the narrative of trying to adapt to a place. This painting was my way of showing my craft process and the place where my ideas become works of art. There are canvases with finished paintings, others with paintings in progress, and a few more still wrapped in the package, showing insight into each of the stages of making a painting. The window has the function of letting in light, but also as a reminder of the outside world and our existence in relation to it. This is a significant contrast with Room, because of its setting in a windowless room in the basement. There is also a contrast of cool and warm colors. If Room represents the ideas and the privacy, Studio represents the physical manifestation of those ideas to be shared with the world. There is a variety of school supplies and art materials, empty water bottles, masks, and other objects that show my process and my interaction with the environment. In this shared space, I use what is available to me to make it more cozy. I use the furniture and objects to delimit and separate my space. The table creates a barrier and it's full of objects. The chair is also placed to block the way, in a certain way, acting as a door. This chapter exists in symmetry with Chapter 5, established by the axis of the mirror. Both chapters deal with art themes. While Chapter 5 has more abstract representations of concepts, Chapter 7 shows their physical counterparts, each with unique representations of the model and the artist. If I had the chance to choose what my life would look like, perhaps I'd choose exactly this. For the room painting, I was vaguely inspired by a small sculpture piece of my room I did in 2018. I took various photos of myself in bed and of my room, and did some preliminary sketches to see which way to go. I also took some close-up shots of different parts of the room in case I needed to reference them for details. After settling for this photo for the portrait, I composed it into a picture of the room I liked. Once I had finished editing the photos into cooler colors, I transferred the drawing to a canvas, again using a grid. I started with an underpainting in cool colors to establish outlines and darker tones in acrylic. Then I added some highlights in yellow. After that, I added in the color. With oil paint, I began to work on the final layers. I followed a similar process for the studio painting. I took a few photos of my studio space and tried adding in a photo of me for the portrait digitally. However, this didn't work because it looked inconsistent. I had a friend come over to the studio and I took a couple test photos. After I was convinced by the layout, I had my friend hold my recording device in position and took a few videos with a 0.5 aperture. Later, I took screenshots and edited the colors in the photo warmer. Once the image was ready again, I followed the process of drawing, underpainting in acrylic, and the final layers in oil. Being in the space I was painting became an interesting experience. I was able to look around to inform my decisions and to better understand the reference picture. The amount of detail in this painting is overwhelming, and completing it in such a small scale made it a bigger challenge.